You're listening to Witch Wednesdays, a semi-weekly podcast source for all things witchcraft in the modern world. Join your host, Steph, on Wednesday mornings to chat about seasons, Sabbats, and all new witchcraft topics to help you make your life more magical. Welcome back to Witch Wednesdays. I'm Steph, and I have a guest here with me today that I'm very excited to chat with because I think I have to check your list, but I'm pretty sure I have read all of your books. I own most of them. So you have been a long time one of my favorite authors. So very excited to chat. Before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over so you can introduce yourself and let people know where they can find you online.
Hi, I'm Amy Blackthorn. I am the author of a jillion books on mostly on the relationship between people and plants. The forthcoming book that is not is actually Social Media Magic, and that'll be out on August 20th. Super duper excited. I want to connect people between the lands that they're on and the plants that encompass their space and really develop that relationship because we think of our land and our space as a blank canvas, which it kind of is. So, working with Blackthorn's Botanical Magic, Sacred Smoke, Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, which is a potion book, super awesome. Um, those relationships are something we're exploring together. So you can find out more at amyblackthorn.com. You can download the first 30 pages of every one of my books. I want you to know that my voice is the one you want in your head. So you can check that out at amyblackthorn.com, and you can check out my tea shop at blackthornsbotanicals.com.
Wonderful. That's so nice of you to offer that many pages free of all of your books.
Right? I absolutely love it. People, you flip through the books in the bookstore and they're sort of a random assortment of pages, but this way you have some continuity.
Which makes sense because a lot of times witchcraft books, fiction books, I just don't jive with an author's style. And that's
Yeah.
nothing about the content that's in there. It's just everybody writes with their own voice. That's part
Hmm.
of the author coming across. So I might really like some of the content that's in there, but if I don't like the writing style or the voice, like I'm not going to finish the book and then it's just a waste. So it's kind of wonderful that you're able to really get a feel for your personality.
It's so important because there people say, "Oh my God, there's 87 books on protection magic. Why are you writing a book on protection magic?" Not everybody's going to jive with everybody's voices. Everyone's style is going to be different. Everyone's approach is going to be different. Two best friends who've known each other for 20 years can sit down with the same pile of source materials and write two completely different books.
Absolutely. And I've come across that so many times where I have that whole collection of books and I find something different in every single one.
Yeah,
Well, I would love to ask before we get started on the books that it might be a little difficult considering, normally I like to ask what's sort of your history and how you got started in witchcraft, but I know that you have a long history with practicing and with writing. So instead, I think I'm going to ask you to explain a little bit about kind of what your background is and how you are approaching these topics, sort of what your practice is like.
fantastic. I started a million trillion years ago. I lived in Baltimore City. It was far enough into the city in North Baltimore that there was about one tree per block and a little postage stamp of a yard that we were very lucky to have. And the only plants that I really got to know or meet was a little tiny patch of mint in the backyard in a Scrabble gravel pile next to our basement back door. And I'm thinking, well, this is awesome, but what makes this plant different than every other plant that I've encountered? The grass and the trees. Until my mom explained that is where the flavor from your favorite ice cream comes from. You like mint chocolate chip? This is peppermint. These are your friends. And it was like, okay, this is awesome. You told me don't eat things off of the ground, but food comes out of the ground. So where's the dividing line? Until the summer between second and third grade, we moved out of Baltimore City and into Baltimore County. And we actually had a yard and some trees and some space. And I am wandering around exploring the yard. One day we've finally moved in, we've got everything settled, and it's time to explore our new space. and there's an azalea. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but I sat down with this plant. I'm sitting cross-legged and sort of leaning into, waiting for this plant to tell me all the secrets of the universe. This fuchsia color that I had probably really never seen before. And I'm entranced by this, and I brush one of the flower petals, and the whole flower falls as a cup onto the ground. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I broke it. When inside this cup, I see a little black seed. And it's like the secrets of the universe just downloaded into my brain. Oh my God, the whole point of flowers is seeds to make plants, to make new plants. For more flowers and more more seeds. So I was absolutely entranced from the first minute, from the word go. I wanted to understand the relationships between people and plants. And so I was lucky enough to go to a horticultural school instead of high school for a good part of my learning. I absolutely, not only was I amazed, but I actually went back for a year of independent study so I could grow my own herbs and explore those relationships as a witch who understood plants and how we can work those together. So I started exploring witchcraft. I was about, oh goodness, I was 11 years old, and my older sister and I shared a bedroom. And anyone who has younger siblings know the fastest way to get your siblings involved in your business is to tell them they're not invited. So my sister comes home from school with her best friend Christine, and they're all clutching backpacks and giggles and jackets, and they run right to the bedroom. Of course, I want to know what's happening because obviously they're up to something. And Holly says, "No, you can't hang out with us. You have to go." Okay, I'm going to figure this out. So that evening, Christine goes home, we have dinner, everybody settles down into their beds for the evening, and I wait. And I wait until Holly is fast asleep, little snores coming from her nose, and I Pink Panther it out of my bed, tippy toe across the room, like army crawl low style, to open up her backpack and figure out what she's hiding. Because I figure it's like good candy or something. And I pull out Wicca Guide for Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham. And so I creep back to my bed, and by the light of the gas station a block down the road, I read Scott Cunningham's words, start to finish, before I can fall asleep that night. It was really incredible to me that I had these thoughts and feelings about nature and the connectedness of the universe and people and our place in it. And here was this book full of words that somebody else agreed with. Somebody else already had thought of this and gotten ahead of the curve. And I was absolutely stuck. I went to the library down the street every day after school for years, reading everything I could get my hands on. I was hooked. The minute I turned 18, I joined the first coven I could find. Never do that, date around a bit. But it was so important to really get to understand the interconnectedness of nature and people and the way that we approach our place in the world.
That is such a fun story. I mean, so many aspects of that are so fun. First of all, I want to say for listeners that your storytelling style comes across in your writing as well. So if you like what you are listening
Yay!
to, then you should pick up these books. I can tell you from experience for sure. Does your sister know that she is credited with starting your career?
She really doesn't.
Really?
Really doesn't.
What a great story and a great way to come across this. And I love chatting with different witches who have come to it at different points in their life, because it's not often with witchcraft, with careers, that you know from such an early age exactly what you want to do in life.
Oh
And
yeah.
that was not me. I did not figure that out very early. It took me a long time. So it's fascinating to see the other side where you figured it out and you knew and you had that calling. That's just beautiful.
It's funny because I decided right around 15, I'm like, okay, I've been doing this for 4 years now. I should be telling some people in my life that are important to me so they know what's up. And so my we'll call her my Aunt Peep. I'm like, Peep is the most amazing, and she approaches her relationships with the people in her life in a very Rogerian way. She's unconditional positive regard. She is right there with it. So I figure, okay, the best person I can tell first is Peep. So I sit her down, and I had this whole speech prepared, and I've got my own copy of Cunningham's work at this point. I'm clutching it to my chest, and I sit her down and I say, guess what, Peep? I'm a witch. And we have the whole drawn out story and the 5-part harmony, and it's great. and she's just amazing. And she says, "This is incredible, and I love you." And witches are awesome. And I used to go to a psychic when I was a kid, like all the cool supportive stuff. Like she bought me most of my ritual tools. It was really incredible. I did not know that my sister was having the same conversation with her a week later. so
What?
so so Holly musters up all her courage and she goes to Peep and she says, "Guess what, Peep? I'm a witch." And she's expecting this pushback and she's built it up in her mind that, oh my goodness, no one's gonna love me and my parents are gonna throw me out and all this other things. And Peep says, "Oh yeah, Amy told me about this last week. We're cool." Like I stole all of her thunder completely by accident,
That's a very little sister move.
right under the wire.
Oh, that's so funny. She must have been like, oh, this is deja vu, I think. Didn't I already have this conversation?
I couldn't imagine. I could like a month later. I could see a week to the day best.
Oh, amazing. Was she doing the same sort of things that you were interested in, the same sort of witchcraft and plants and Scott Cunningham's Wicca, or was she on a different path?
She even brought her original copy of Cunningham with her to have the talk with Peep. But I was the only one who was really interested in the plants and the growing things. I came at it from I transitioned into an herbalist style understanding of where our relationships with plants are. But she went and joined a ceremonial magic group, probably 19 years old, and so she went off in the higher magic, and I stay with the lower magic.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I love how that came across for your whole family in totally
Right.
different ways. It's exciting.
It was great when I told my parents. Like I waited till my mom was cooking, so she had something to occupy her hands. And I sat all up to her and I say, I've been scrunching myself up for this whole thing. I've had like sneaky side conversations, like, "So, do you think God is a woman?" The whole time. And so I finally, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." I wait till she's cooking dinner. I said, "Guess what, Mom? I'm a witch." And she says, "Oh, that's really interesting. Have you told your dad yet?" And so I go outside. My stepdad is trellising a clematis in the garden, and he says, I say, "Oh, Johnny, guess what? I'm a witch." And he says, "Oh yeah, I dated a witch in high school. How was your day?" Like he didn't care. He was completely unfazed. It's not that he didn't care. He was unfazed. And so all this scrunching up I had built myself up to was completely like whoosh, all gone, all out. Everybody's cool. We're all friends.
It's nice to have a story turn out that way, though, because sometimes
Yes.
it doesn't, and that's like the worst to hear. So to have it all turn out that well is always so nice.
Oh yeah, this was around the time that Tempest Smith had died, so I was prepared for horror and terror and tears and yelling. I was really worked up about it, and so I'm glad that it turned out that way.
And then led down the path of putting all of your thoughts and learnings into writing.
I have wanted a book with my name on it since before I could write my name. I wanted a book with my name on it. I wanted to tell stories. My mother had bought me a diary pre-kindergarten. Like it was a grown-up diary, but she gave it to me. She's like, write down whatever you want in here. And she expected a diary so she could check in on me. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna write my stories in it. Thanks. I'll be over here.
That's amazing. So another one that came across, you knew out
Oh
of the
yeah,
room what you wanted to do in life. That's so cool.
right out of the box.
Oh, I love it. So how did you decide your newest book? Because they're all, like you said, other than the social media one, they are in sort of the same realm of plants
Mhm.
and interacting with plants, but they are all a bit different. So how did you decide this newest one that's coming out in the fall?
So when I was talking so for those of you who are not familiar with the process, you have to submit a proposal for what you want to write about. So how do you want to approach it? What kind of depth are you looking for? What sort of slant are you coming from? Give us a couple chapters so we have an idea of where you're going with this and a sample table of contents. And so I was really looking for a connection. I had taken Blackthorn's Botanical Magic and I wanted to keep writing it. I got to, 80,000 words, 85,000 words. And I was like, I would like to keep writing forever. And there's some stuff that I had really wanted to talk about in botanical magic that I really didn't get a chance to explore. And it didn't really belong in a beginner level book because it was a little too in the weeds. And so I really wanted to extend that out a little further. So I like to think of it as a sequel to botanical magic because there's some experiences and some ideas in there that are a little bit, I wouldn't say advanced. That's too wrong. It's too pointy. I really wanted to be able to connect people with their individual plants that they had experienced. So I really like jasmine perfume. Well, this is how you can experience jasmine as an embodied spirit with agency. I'm going to meet the spirit of jasmine and I'm going to explain, I really love working with you. Is there something that I can be doing to really enhance our working relationship together? We talk about, if you have an allergy to a specific plant, you can meet that plant in your inner journey, your inner landscape, and talk about what you have to learn from each other from that allergy. Oh, I'm allergic to peanuts. Well, definitely don't encounter peanuts in the wild. Instead, work from your inner landscape and see what that allergy has to teach you. So it was really developing context of the agency of those beings. Because when we talk about a lot of plants, when you talk about a lot of magical books on working with plants, there's a lot of the word use. And I feel like that's a very taker technology, a very colonial mindset of I'm just going to use whatever I find. It's mine. And it feels very dominionist when we talk about that word use. I want to work in concert with these entities. I want to work in concert with the spirit of peppermint or the spirit of cinnamon. I want to work in concert with those because agency is so, so important. People say, Amy, can I do this? Consent is my favorite thing. Working together is great, but when everybody's on the same page, it just flows so much better. So consent is really, really important to me personally.
Agreed completely. And it's once you get started down the path of herbalism and working with plants, you really realize how different they all are, not just in the way they smell or how they're used, but they have different energies. Like if
Oh
you just
yeah,
pick it up and hold it, they feel completely different.
wildly different personalities.
I love to see the personalities come across. That's my favorite part of going out into the woods or something. I don't have to be even collecting anything, just sitting out there to just feel all of the different energies that are coming across, like in, a wildflower field or something. It's just so much fun to me.
You're not wrong. I mean, when you look at, okay, I have my budget is off this week, and so I'm worried about overdrafting my checking account. Maytang, or let's say a cubeba, is going to have a completely different reaction to your problem than a frankincense tree. A bush is going to respond in a way that is more immediate and more understanding. And here's some practical thoughts that you may not have had yet. Let's problem solve together. Whereas frankincense, trees have a longer, obviously, lifespan. But because of how the length of that lifespan, it really helps them to approach their problems on an epic scale. They don't think in days, weeks, and months. They think in decades. So they're not going to say, okay, this week it's a problem, next week it'll be better. They're going to say, let's involve some long-term strategy planning for the future. It's going to involve stability and practicality and slow, mature growth rather than immediate solutions.
Which makes so much sense when you sit down and think about how the plant or tree came to be and its own life cycle and growth cycle. It makes sense that that corresponds in the same way to the energy and how it would work within your spellcraft.
Absolutely. When we talk about essential oils, people look at the price difference between tangerine essential oil and frankincense essential oil, and they say, "Oh my God, frankincense is 100 times more expensive. Why in the world would that be a thing?" And you look at how frankincense grows, it takes 20 years, 2 decades, from the time it's planted and germinates a seed until it starts producing the sap that we get resin from that we can then make essential oil from. 20 years of paying the water bill and the mortgage and the land and the guy who comes to mow on the weekends. before you can even think about making a product to turn a profit on.
That is such a long time. Yeah,
Right.
it's something nobody really thinks about.
Right. When you think about trees, you have to be planning in decades. The what's that saying? Something about the best time to have planted that tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today.
Makes sense. And something else I really appreciate about your writing that comes across in a lot of your books is not just like the energy and respecting the plants, but also respecting yourself and your interactions with them and making your own distinctions about what comes across, because I know a lot of writing out there can come across like a textbook and that there's only one way to do something and that if you aren't doing it that way that you're wrong.
Oh
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
and
Uh,
even when it comes to plant correspondences, some people will say that, this is the only way to work with it and this is what you should be feeling. But I really appreciate in your writing that you let the listeners and let the readers know that it's really about your own associations and having that mutually beneficial relationship and figuring out what that means to you.
Absolutely. When we look at the way that we approach peppermint, you could make some peppermint tea, you could work with pepper and essential oil, you could grow the plant, you could meet them in your inner landscape and sort of develop that relationship together. But it's all about where we're coming from. I worked with my parents. I did some other stuff, but we were very poor. I've had experienced homelessness, and it's really important to me to give people as much variety in the way they approach their magic as possible because not everybody has a shop down the street. Not everybody has the money to afford essential oils. There's always going to be another way to approach a problem. And that's the important thing about magic. We have the agency to change it, but the way that we express that as magical people is going to be as different today. You know, you have a coven of 10 people, every single person who have all had the same training and the same are not going to have the same experience. They're going to have a different way to approach each problem as an independent person. So I want to give people as many tools as they have the ability to retain in their mind or in their book to approach those very practically. Practical is my middle name. I'm a double Virgo. This is practical is super duper important for me.
And that, exactly leads me into your other book that I wanted to talk about, is the social media spell book, which will be coming out very soon and is exciting. But I did read and review on my YouTube channel in last month's reading wrap up. So listeners, you might already be familiar with the things that I'm going to say, but one of the things that I liked, highlighting from that was that you gave so many options for something to use in the spell. It wasn't like you need a green candle and you need this blue crystal and those are your only options. You gave like a whole list of things that could be used. And I was like, this is so helpful. And I love that for beginner witches, especially because listeners, if you weren't familiar or didn't watch my review, it is 365 days of spells. There's one for every day. There's so much information packed in here. But if you were to do that and only provide, one or two things that you had to have for each spell, that would be so much money. That would be so many items to collect. And I just appreciated so much that you could really make each one your own.
And you have no idea how much we cut out just to make it fit into the size book that we have because
Really?
we got to the point where we were cutting down by spaces, like not just characters with spaces, but characters without spaces. We were by I'm going to take out this period here just to make everything fit. So half of the book wound up on the cutting room floor. I'm so glad that it comes across as here's some options. I want to empower you. I don't want to make you frustrated.
It was fantastic. So for those who have not checked it out yet, let's talk a little bit about what people can expect in there, because that's, plants are used in there, of course, but it is a little bit of a departure from your normal books.
Absolutely. So when I keep saying absolutely, but I'm so excited. uh, I have a number of different Facebook pages. One of them is called Witchcraft Down and Dirty, and it's been around for about 12 years, maybe longer. Time is a funny thing. So one of my dearest friends in the whole world, Michael, and I created this page to, you know, add some lightness and some humor into our witchcraft practice. And so it has been memes and silliness for as long as the page has been in existence. But it has grown my reach on Facebook by itself to last count, it was over 280 million people. That's just mind-boggling.
That's so many.
It's so many people. Um, but it gives us the opportunity to really express to a wide variety of people and a wide variety of people's individual expressions and um, really histories with magic. We want to reach as many people as we can because it's fun and we want to add that levity and that humor to it. So Natalie Zaman, my writing partner, we talked about this in 2017. Oh my goodness. When I was writing Botanical Magic, you know, what about writing a book about magic and social media? How we not just memes, but how we approach it and how we can build a practice, even above and beyond like a 101 style book to encompass a lot of people's different experience levels and time practicing witchcraft. Can we make that fun and exciting and really enjoyable for people? I was eyeballs deep in botanical magic at that point, so I really couldn't devote any more brain power to a different project. And so we came back around to it a couple of years ago and said, you know what, this is something that I can dig my teeth into. It gives me an excuse to hang out with Natalie. Natalie Zaman wrote the oh my god magical destinations of the Northeast. It's a travel guide for witches from DC to Maine. It was originally going to be part of a series, and maybe she'll be able to pick that up at some point. She's also done some magical coloring books and some other projects in addition to her fiction work. So Natalie has some really incredible wealth of experience, and Natalie is one of the reasons that I'm writing today. In 2015, it was December 15th, I think, 2015, and Natalie said, "Hey, Judica Isles is going to be in the Bronx at this fabulous little second floor walk up that was in existence at that point. It's no longer there with us, but Lady Rhea had a shop in the Bronx, and we said, you know what, we're going to go meet Lady Rhea. We're going to go hang out with Judica. It was a class on the witches of Yule, and I was super excited just to get out of the house and see some of my witchy friends. And once the class had gotten started, Judica wandered in with an armload of books and a big old smile on her face when it came time for an intermission. Because keep in mind, this was supposed to be a 2 hour class, and we decided to take intermission at hour three. And everyone just had so much fun connecting that we just figured we're going to make a whole day of it. So Judica's like, I'm going to keep talking. You just kick me out whenever you're done. So intermission time comes, and Judica comes over and sits with Natalie and I. We'd all been friends for years at that point. And she says, Amy, why aren't you writing for us? Like, I've seen your advice column. I've seen your blog. Why aren't you writing for us? I'm like, that sounds awesome, but who is us? Oh, I just started working with Redwell Weiser as one of their editors, and I'd love to talk to you about some work that you do. I elevator pitched her 5 books, and she picked the first one that I was really passionate about, which became uh, Blackthorn's Botanical Magic. So I'm absolutely over the moon. I sent her the proposal. That was the hardest part, was getting over the imposter syndrome of, well, who am I to talk about this material? Am I capable of writing a book? And so it was really fantastic for her to say, oh yeah, this is amazing. Let's jump right into it. So had Natalie not said, hey, let's drive to the Bronx and go hang with Judica, I don't think I'd have gotten there, maybe not as quickly as I did. Um, I always thought when I wanted a book with my name on it, I really thought that I'd be published as a fiction author before nonfiction. But nonfiction is where I've really just made a home for myself.
That's so wonderful to have a friend like that and then still have that friend be in your life and then to work on a project with them. That's just like
Absolutely.
full circle. Beautiful, amazing witchcraft at work. Well, I really appreciated your book because social media stresses me out. And it is something that I have talked about on this podcast numerous times that I just don't like it. But then your book just like opened up a whole world for me of how to fix those problems of like why it was stressing me out so much and look at it from a different perspective to make it more useful. And for listeners, it's not just social media. It's not like Facebook and Instagram tips. There's also, the digital space in general and using media and digital options for like organizing your photos, for example. That was one of them that I was like, this makes so much sense. But there were just so many different things that came across that I was like, okay, this I can make social media work for me and not constantly fall into that trap of it being a time suck or hurting my feelings in whatever way. Imposter syndrome is one of them. But I just always had so much stress and anxiety about it. And I was like, this book makes so much sense.
And it was nice because there were publishers who were afraid that it wouldn't age well. They were like, okay, well, Twitter is melting down as we speak. So how do we know that this book is going to be relevant in 5 years? And so it was never about one platform versus another platform. It was about what is safe to share, what is too much sharing, what is how do we approach the things that we share online with our safety in mind. I worked in personal protection and executive protection for 15 years. So what are the things that we can share safely? What are the things that we're going to talk about? And how can we approach that in the safest way possible? We're talking about password security. We're talking about how to hide your home from your online life. We want to make sure that people are not finding you as easily as perhaps they could. As an author, it was really important to me to establish all that stuff as I was building my presence as Amy Blackthorn, because I have had people find where I live. I've had people find where I had worked. I've had people show up at work and say, "Oh, I heard you were a witch." This can be really scary stuff, and it's important that not only do we express ourselves in our online spaces as our authentic selves, but how can we do that is that as safely as humanly possible.
Which I think the younger generations aren't as cognizant of, because when you are that age, having been that age myself, you think you're invincible and that those things aren't going to happen to you. So to have a book that expresses those things in a still a fun way, in a way that incorporates social media with all the kids are obsessed with, it's such a good resource to have that, like good reminders for us as we're older. We have figured out how bad some of the people in the world can be and how dangerous it can be. So good reminders for us, but also great for the next generations coming up, no matter what social media app tends to come across or is popular at the moment, those tips will still apply.
Oh yeah, I had just come off of writing Blackthorn's Protection Magic when I dove into social media magic, and the 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 variety of things that people we don't know what we don't know, obviously, but there's a 13,000 word escape and evasion course in the middle of protection magic. It's how to get home safely. What do you do if you find somebody following you home from work? What to have in your laptop bag? What to have in your car? What do you do if somebody tries to steal you? Uh, it's not a self-defense class. It's not punching and kicking. It's how to think on your feet and make sure that you are as safe as possible. So really incorporating that into some of the things that I was working on in social media magic was very, very important. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done together.
And it is very important. It's all about incorporating those mundane efforts as well. You can't just do a protection spell and expect that that's going to cover all your bases and that you're
Oh
going to
yeah.
be safe. Like you have to, be aware of your surroundings and take those safety precautions that we all do, women especially, we know. You have to do those safety things, those mundane efforts that your spell work can absolutely help with, but you've got to take these other precautions too.
Oh yeah, situational awareness is priceless. If I can't defend myself, if I'm not paying attention to the things that are going on around me, and it's really important to make sure that we understand the levels of situational awareness that are going to drive what we're doing. If I'm leaving the mall and I went to the Apple store to buy a new computer to write my next book on, but I've got my head in my phone and I've got my head down and my shoulders hunched and I'm sort of in my own world, I have no idea what's going on around me. And it is absolutely impossible for me to react to a threat if I don't know that it's coming. There's the regular awareness of I'm looking around, I'm making eye contact with people, I'm acknowledging their existence. Like it looks like I'm engaged enough to keep an eye out on what's going on around me. But it also gives me the opportunity to go through the little Rolodex in my brain of things to do in case of an emergency. If I see a guy running at me full tilt from a half a block away, I have time to plan. But if I'm writing a text message to my sweetie And in my phone, I can't see this dude running at me like a steam train. I've got time to figure out what to do next. Do I flee? Do I go into a store? Do I go around people? Do I duck in? And every single thing that we're deciding happens in a 16th of a second. Action is always faster than reaction. So making sure that we have that time and that energy dedicated to, okay, let's do it. We're going to make sure that every bit of the things that we're doing, make sure that we get home safely at the end of the day. So that it's not just about agency, it's about making sure that we can make the best informed choices that we can. So we take that to social media and we're making sure that we're giving a nice uniform presence. We can make sure that we're presenting ourselves as best we can, but we're also making sure that people understand that I am aware and I am protected.
Which makes a lot of sense in the physical world, in the online world. And I think it's just as important as, making your feed look pretty. Let's focus on maybe more on the safety aspect or things that like might be more important. That was something that helped me be less stressed about it. I was like, none of this stuff matters.
Yeah.
Like,
And as
here's so many other ideas from this book to incorporate that matter so much more and make so much more of an effect on my life than the things that I'm currently stressing about.
yeah, when I was looking at the how to approach the book, I really wanted, as a magical business owner, I wanted to give something that someone had the opportunity to look at as uh, a year's worth of magical prompts for to keep their social media presence going. You want to keep yourself engaged and keep your audience engaged. Here's a way to make the most of your audience. So it's not just okay. I'm no longer a beginner. I can write my own spells. It's not about that. It's making sure that you feel a way to be engaged with your practice all year long.
Also, something that I have struggled with and still do. It just ebbs and flows with the seasons. And it just, that also adds like a little layer of stress. So that's something that I like about those like 365, like here's all these ideas, like something you could do each day, and like they're very tangible and small in scale. It's not going to take me 3 hours of sitting at my computer to do one of the spells that's in the book. Like there's so many options for doing things like a little bit more quickly and just keeping it at the forefront of my mind rather than doing these elaborate rituals once every 3 months, and being stressed out that it's not like perfect. I'm like, okay, this is such manageable chunks in here. It makes me so happy, and they're all dated and everything's in order, and it's just beautiful.
One of my favorite things that anyone ever told me about my online work as far as social media presence goes is done is better than perfect.
I love that phrase. It's such a lesson that I need to learn. I like keep telling myself over and over, but it has not sunk in yet.
I have a really hard time hearing my own voice, which was weird starting a podcast when you're like, I hate the sound of my voice. but taking that time to uh, figure out how to have a presence on camera was also super duper scary. When TikTok started being a thing, I'm like, okay, people are going to look at me. I don't think I want to be perceived, but we're gonna work with it. So that was absolutely, I think that one of the hardest parts was getting over my own feelings about being perceived.
That is scary. That is one of the scariest parts of putting yourself out there like that and creating content online. But I think that's also a scary part of being an author too, because you're really putting
Yes.
yourself out there that way.
Well, we think about the life of a writer, and you get a mug of your favorite hot beverage, and you sit in your space, and you write on your computer. They don't tell you you have to talk to people. Nobody told me this.
There's so much more that goes into it. I shut that down pretty early, but I used to get that at the beginning of the podcast, being like, "Why don't you put this in a book? Why don't you, write this stuff down? Like you like writing." I'm like, I can't do a book. I love that you are out there doing this work and that others are out there. I have so much respect for it, but it's just the one thing that I know is not my calling. I'm like so confident in that.
The idea of writing is way more fun than actually writing.
I I think that's exactly how I would feel about it.
People say, "Oh, how do you do this? How do you be an author? What is your day like?" I told them I just yell at the walls in my office until a book falls out.
Well, it's been a very successful strategy for you so far.
I'm making it work.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here today and chatting about all your different books, including your upcoming two. I will have everything linked for listeners so they could check it out because, like you said, your website is wonderful and offers all of these free previews to check it out before you dive in. And I know that the listeners are going to be very excited once they get started. If they've never read one of your books before, they are really in for a treat.
Thank you so much for having me.
And listeners, like I said, everything will be linked below. And that is everything that I've got for you this week. I will see you all next week.
Need even more witchcraft in your life? Subscribe to Witch Wednesdays on Patreon and YouTube for all types of exclusive bonus content like spells, recipes, book reviews, and more, or even order personalized tarot readings and spells. Be sure to follow on Instagram at Witch Wednesdays Podcast. And you can find all these links and more at witchwednesdays.com.